Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 267 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The Second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, she's the greatest hostess in the world. She is amazing. She is as bright as the first sun in the morning. Aaron Putt. How you doing, Aaron? They've been better.
Well,
better flattery.
I think this is the first time I've been compared to Galadriel, so thank you.
Can I have a file?
Can you have a file?
Yeah, the PHIAL. I think it's supposed to be pronounced that way. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I get what you're saying now.
I'm just saying it's good if you get attacked by a giant spider. You never know.
Yes. I don't like it. Okay, I understand very few of our listeners understood that. But if you listen to the Black Pants Legion podcast, you will be laughing yourself stupid right now. Should I explain, Weer'd?
Please.
Okay, so a while back, we had on Handgun Radio Tex from the Black Pants Legion. And Tex has had his own podcast since 2020. And he mainly talks about exceptionally nerdy things. So, of course, I am enthralled and I've been listening to it. And one of the earlier podcasts, he had on another member of the Legion who was a super Lord of the Rings fanatic. And they were talking about, well, among other things, that particular phial of water that contained, like, the essence of... one of the trees that replaced the sun, deep Tolkien lore, and that was the thing that was used to banish Shelob. And so Tex was recounting a story from when he was younger and he was starting to play D&D, and he had a DM who had a very deep Southern accent and would say a lot of things deadpan. And so ever since, that has left an impression on Tex, and one of his favorite things to do when doing bad guys is to give him that kind of accent. And so that was his impression of Shelob being driven away by Galadriel's file. You know, hiss. I don't like it. Awful bright. I don't remember which episode it was. Probably none of you care, but it was funny. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing all right. It's been a busy day. Just my wife and I have some very, very good but very heavy plans that I don't intend to share. But it was just there was a lot of deep seated discussions on what was to go forward with this, and then a
so
much
when are you
more.
Moving?
What's that?
So when are you moving?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? No, that's unfortunately a very complicated scenario that would happen eventually, but not in the very near future.
Oh, all right.
But the bottom line, that would, if we moved, that would screw up with my daughter's new job.
Hooray for child labor!
Yes, yep. Our town has a local paper, and I was as I was reading it one evening, I saw that they said, oh, they have a carrier position for these following streets, and one of those streets was one that was right near us, and I said, oh, look at that. They've got a position on that, and my daughter had been mentioning one of her friends, her older brother actually delivers our paper, and so she's kind of like, oh, so you can just deliver the paper, yeah, and you get money for that, yeah, I like money, and so I said, yeah, we'll keep an eye out for paper jobs, and so yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, are you interested? Yeah, okay, well. You know, while you're at school tomorrow, I'll give them a call and just make sure that they'll take a child as young as you, and they like no hesitation. And so I said, all right, cool. Well, we'll talk about it over the weekend, and then And then we're right near. My daughter takes a class on that same street, and so it was like, okay, well then you can we'll be right there. So we'll stop in and I'll have her ask you any questions, and we'll see what happens. And it was pretty much just congratulations, you're hired.
So first of all, I'm surprised that paper deliveries are still a thing. Mainly because I'm still surprised to be reminded that newspapers are still a thing.
I mean, they really don't need to be. I mean, it's one of those, like, one of the papers that I used to get for years and years was the Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts paper. When you became a member of GOL, they would send you a newsletter. I think it was once a month, and it was just a simple, newsprint style newsletter and all that. And then after a while, they realized we don't need to, like, pay all this money for printing and delivery when we can just put it up on the website and you can just go there. And that's the same thing with this. But I like it. It's just a little. I mean, it's like printed like right in town. Like it's very, very local. Like local people will submit photographs, and you get the police blotter for the town, which on most days is one of those like, oh yeah, no, this is a super duper low crime town that like we're talking about like the homeless person walking down the street just yelling at people, and the cops just said, hey, calm down. And we wrote it up on the police blotter. And they have Sudoku, and I love Sudoku so much.
There we go. You're facilitating your Sudoku fix.
Oh yeah, it gets extra better when there's Sudoku delivered in the mail.
So I'm trying to remember how old your daughter is, and she's older than first grade, I think.
Oh yeah, she just started fourth grade, and she'll be 10 in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. Now, I don't know how paper deliveries are done these days, but as I recall from my childhood, you would have to get up awfully dang early in the morning, like before the sun was up, in order to get the papers, so that you could have the papers when people got up, and had their morning coffee.
And that would be true, except for it's an evening paper. So the rules are she needs to have them all delivered by 6:30 in the evening.
Oh, so basically she comes home from school and does it.
That's correct. Yep. I'll get the papers delivered to the house sometime during the day, and then when she gets home, we'll count them up, put them in the weatherproof bags if the weather seems to be threatening, and then for the start it'll be the two of us going. She's like, I want you tagging along with me, and I said, I know you. She's got a super independent streak. I will deliver papers with you as long as you want me to, which will be probably about a week and a half's worth. And then she'd be like, you know what, Dad? I don't need you anymore. I thought so.
So that leads me to my final question, because Massachusetts has winters.
It does.
Where there's snow and ice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bicycling in the snow and ice does not sound fun.
Oh, the area for this is extremely small, and so yeah, and actually she actually doesn't ride a bike, so this is going to be all on foot.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes some things easier and some things harder. All right.
Yeah. No, it's probably about. Honestly speaking, I think leaving the house, because our street isn't included in this, so leaving our house and going to the first delivery point, and then by the time she returns, she'll maybe have walked 1.5 miles. Maybe not even that. Might be just a solid mile.
Mm.
So it's easy business.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help that like some of it's essentially one of the streets is one of our more business oriented streets. So there's like a couple places where like she goes into one building and there's like a whole bunch of there's a couple of drops in that one building. So like she could essentially get half her paper route done in like the first 2 stops if she wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And so what exactly is the princely sum she will receive for this task?
$15 a week.
That's not bad for a 9-year-old.
It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. We're going to definitely be having some discussion because we're definitely not going to allow her to go to the strip club and make it rain.
I think the most she could do is make it sprinkle, but okay.
That's right. She could go to the strip club and tip generously. This is Massachusetts. But she cannot go to the strip club and make it rain.
I mean, I'm just here going, dang, I wish I could get $15 for walking around the neighborhood. That'd be nice.
I mean, if you've got a town newspaper, why don't you call them up and ask?
Yeah, but it's morning.
Yes.
It's not the sweet, cushy afternoon gig your daughter has.
That's true. Yeah, evening circulation papers are definitely a thing of the past, and I mean the good news is she will probably be goddamn sick of a paper route by the time and be hungry for more for more lucrative career opportunities by the time this paper disappears. But I don't know. I would not be surprised if this paper lasts forever.
Well, all right.
So how are you doing, Aaron?
I mean, not awful, but not really great. I mean, people who listened last week know that I had a tooth out, and it doesn't hurt, although, like, I think on Wednesday I felt really crappy, and they had prescribed me like a week's worth of antibiotics, and I stopped taking them because I felt that it was the antibiotics that were making me feel like crap, and I stopped taking them, and I felt good again. And, on the one hand, I understand why, because, they pulled a tooth and they stitched it shut, but I don't know. I feel like there's an overprescription of antibiotics. And it's like,
I agree.
And okay, maybe I should have just not taken them at all rather than taking a little bit, but it was just, I'm not feeling well, and I was feeling fine before I started taking these. I'm done.
Well, the good news is, as the doctor that I am, Weer'd is not a medical doctor. He's not the other kind either. And but as a medical doctor, I will let you know that if you weren't feeling any symptoms of an infection, then taking a little bit of antibiotics is not going to do really much of anything to you.
Well, I wasn't really worried about me, but I know that the overprescription of antibiotics is leading to the rise of antibiotic-resistant microbes.
And there certainly is that. But again, you would still need to have, whether or not you would still need to have an infection to start to make that dangerous, because the antibiotic resistant bacteria are around anyway. But if they're all by themselves and you're fighting them off, because your white blood cells are going to kill them no matter what, because they're just brute force and ignorance. There's no oh, we're going to do some like nice little immune. No, we're just going to strangle you. So yeah, that's true. And also, yeah, if you were routinely taking antibiotics, like I had a neighbor who's would every time she got a cold, she would just go into the doctors and get him to give her some antibiotics. And it's one of those no, that's not a good idea. And, so yeah, but yeah, again, if you don't have an infection going on or anything like that, yeah, it's really nothing to worry about. Yeah, the big risk with what you were doing, and you made me pucker up for a second until I really thought about it, and is that the danger is, and I talked about this back in the Gun Blog Variety Cast time with it was actually a blue collar prepping segment, because you had asked me about the fish antibiotics, and you'd heard someone say, "Can you take them?" And I realized, hey, if they've got the exact same imprint as a human antibiotic pill, then it's the exact same stuff. And but the big thing that I warned everybody is, do heavy amounts of research on the appropriate dosage course for somebody your size and weight, because you want to essentially do scorched earth when you take antibiotics. Is you want to knock the infection down, and then you want to sow salt in the soil, because if you don't, if there's a couple left over, they're going to be the strong ones and they're going to recolonize.
By the way, the government has patched that loophole. They have now made it illegal to sell unlicensed, antibiotics in vet shops. You have to get a prescription, really, now is what I'm saying. So that's gone. I think the other reason that they were making me feel bad is because I'm allergic to penicillin.
Mm-hmm.
And so traditionally the alternatives they've given me, which is some sort of mycin.
Probably zithromycin Z-Pack.
Yeah, I say that again, please.
Zithromycin.
That is not what I was given. It was something like a clindamycin.
Okay.
I think. But what I'm getting at is I remember when I was sick a lot as a kid, and I would be given erythromycin. It was, pink and thick. It's sort of like Pepto-Bismol, really, except it had to be refrigerated. And that would always give me terrible stomach cramps because one of the things it would do is it would kill the stomach and intestinal flora as part of its course. And I don't know if penicillin does that, but I've never heard of penicillin giving stomach cramps the way that erythromycin and the other mycins do. And that was one of the things that was bothering me. So it's just like, well, I mean, okay, I can take a little tummy cramping, but this one was just, I felt like I had been gut punched, and it was just, no. So that's why I stopped taking it.
Yeah, pretty much all the systemic antibiotics will at least knock down your gut flora, and so therefore can cause some issues. And then the question on how to get the gut flora back is
a probiotic.
Yeah, well, and there's discussion. Some may have some efficacy, scientifically speaking. Some may not. Certainly, there is a lot of discussion of whether or not the active cultures in yogurt or sourdough or kombucha is another good one, where you're drinking a lot of healthy microbes, may or may not actually survive your stomach, and so therefore for them to get into your intestines is not something that's going to happen. But
there's transplant.
Yeah, but there is the poop transplant. Yes. Yeah, it was actually a lab I worked in, was actually one of the premier poop transplant labs. And
of course it was. Of course you worked there.
What was hilarious is we actually got to look over the actual surgical protocol, and it actually said, go down to CVS, buy this brand of blender, bring it up into the lab, run it through the autoclave.
Will it blend?
Put it into that. Yeah, they use it. You would put the stool sample and then whatever else in there, and then blend it up, and then you would apply it to the recipient, and then you would take the blender and throw it in the trash.
I mean, surely you could keep the motor. You just need to replace the blade and the cup thing and the lid thing.
Well, and you could probably do all of it if it was made by and it probably will be someday if fecal transplants become a much more common occurrence as we learn more about gut microbiota. But that's if you ever watched orthopedic surgery, and or are friends with Dr. John Adele. He knows I've got some medical background, so as soon as he sees me, oh, weird, let me show you something, and just starts pulling out photographs of like kids held together with screws, and just like, look what I did there. And it's one of those, like, this is really good, but like even sometimes he catches me off guard, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I wasn't ready for that, but all right, now I'm ready. And oh wow, yeah, no, that's really cool how you did that. And there's a lot of like artistry that has to go on with okay, how am I going to get this shattered limb back together? And But yeah, if you watch any of that stuff, like all of that original orthopedic surgery started off with like off the shelf hardware. Like they were using Black & Decker drills and things like that to put screws into bones.
Okay, you're done now.
Yeah, but either way, what I'm trying to say is that now they have for such surgeries, they have dedicated medical grade power tools that can be taken apart in such a way so that the parts that are in contact with people can be through, and various shields can be put in place so that there's no contamination of, say, the drive motor, which could get stuff into it and would be very, very difficult to sterilize, etc. So someday, yes, they will probably make like an all stainless steel medical grade blender for blending poop or whatever else you need blended up. But
Poop Blender would make an excellent name for a punk band.
I'm like, you said poop. As soon as you said Poop Blender, I'm like, that is a good punk band name. Oh, good times.
Nothing but G.G. Allen cover songs.
Yes. Oh, I'm not going to list any of them. When my daughter was young, I was like one of those like, oh, well, I don't want to expose her with too many filthy words, but like, yeah, if she doesn't really know the words, the context, it'll be fine. And I realized there is just like no G.G. Allen song that could be played to a child who's at a verbal age under any circumstance. Until she gets to be about 10 years old, and then she's like, "Oh, Dad, I hate this music." She'll learn.
Or maybe she'll take after her mother.
I mean, she kind of is. Well, one of my daughter's favorite artists is Little Sis Nora, and if anybody listens to her, I mean, number one, she's extremely talented, and the number of musical styles that she dips into are amazing. But she tends to ride a little bit on the risque, and every so often my wife will hear songs about Little Sis Nora singing about buying MDMA, or there's another song that she has called Booty Call, and my wife's listening to this song, and she's like, finally she goes, "Do we get ahead of this and just tell her what this means?" And all that. And it's just one of those, like, she'll ask questions. She asks me questions about this stuff if she has questions. Otherwise, she's just grooving to the music and all that. She's just like, my wife just gets so nervous. And I'm like, have you ever looked at your music collection? Like, if you looked at the music that she, not so much anymore, but like when she was in her like late, early adult, late teens, early adulthood, up until probably about her 30s, and then she kind of tamed out. But like, you would think my wife was the biggest drug addict known to man. Like all like these like heavy, like hallucinogenic EDM songs and all of this, like, all sorts of like, she'd listen to Snoop Dogg and stuff like that. It's just one of those, like, you seem like you are such a stoner by your musical choice, but you are not. And so it's one of those like, yeah. So my daughter may be taking that way. So far, she seems like she is a tame little girl, but she's just like, yeah, I just like the music.
Well, I mean, as a classic example, Semi-Term Kind of Life back 25 some odd years ago has a really upbeat, peppy, catchy beat. And then when you stop and really listen to the lyrics, this is about hooking up after binging on methamphetamines.
Like you do. I mean, and there's also that angle of the, hey, I like to play violent video games where I shoot people in the face and cut them up with knives and stuff like that. Is that because I'm like a horrible murderer? No, I'm not a horrible murderer, which means the only time I can experience these sort of things is in the video game world. I don't have a desire to shoot real people in the face, but shooting fake people in the face? Yeah, that's kind of fun. And speaking of getting shot in the proverbial face, oh, this story came out shortly after last week's show, and I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this because this is
it's Governor Grisham and the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, do you want to take this away, Aaron?
I think you will enjoy it more than I will. Go ahead.
Yes. So shortly, I mean, we obviously reported that the attorney general and like the sheriffs and all that are like, yeah, no, we're not touching this. And again, in case you missed the last show and have been living under a rock, the governor of New Mexico essentially declared a 30-day lift on the Second Amendment and said that
not lift, ban.
Yeah. And you could you could not carry a firearm open or concealed, anywhere within the essentially the city of or the county that Albuquerque is in, and this was supposedly to reduce gun violence, even though she openly admitted, no, it's not going to do anything. I'm doing it because it feels good. And so the chief of police of Albuquerque said, yeah, I'm not touching this. And the sheriff of the county said, I'm not touching this either. And the good people of Albuquerque held a protest in the state, and they were all like, so many of them were open carrying and all that. And not a single person was arrested because, no, they're not touching it. Nobody did anything bad. So nobody caught any heat.
I'm not even sure if any law enforcement showed up.
Yeah, you know what? I saw some coverage of that, and I don't remember seeing any police officers there or not. But if so, they were there just to keep the peace and not interested in enforcing any potentially illegal laws.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not potentially. I mean, let's be honest. This is about as straight up illegal as you can get. On like multiple levels. Not only is she violating the United States Constitution, that's recently gotten some very good affirmations through NYSERPA, but also the Constitution of New Mexico, which is like, it seems like every other state that has a right to keep and bear arms clause in it is like so much more explicit than the Second Amendment. It just says, yeah, no. And yet there she is. And so now to put a cherry on top, and this is a really big cherry, is the attorney general has openly said he will not defend the governor if the government of New Mexico is sued for this order.
When it is sued, because SAF will, they will.
Yes. Let's see. Did I actually get the quote? I just
and again, while you look that up, I want to point out to our listeners that this isn't partisanship, because the attorney general is not only of the same party as the governor, she appointed him. And so he has decided, and he's not wrong in my opinion, but he has decided that the Constitution is more important than loyalty to the party or to the person who appointed him. And I think that's great. Because as Weer'd pointed out in the pre-show banter, he doesn't want to get disbarred.
Yeah, I actually, it turns out the article that I just grabbed didn't have what I thought was the money quote, where essentially he's saying that, he's openly saying that he's sympathetic to the governor, and he in fact probably has some anti-gun sentiments in his heart as well, but there's legal and there's illegal, and he sees this as illegal, and if he's defending someone for something that's openly illegal and he knows that it's openly illegal, that is a major problem as a lawyer, and you could get into a lot of trouble. Would he? I'd probably say no. I've seen far more blatant stuff than that, and people not getting disbarred. But it's certainly a it's certainly a good it's certainly a good enough excuse to like leave her the heck alone. And of course, as you said, not if she gets sued, when she gets sued, and so that's kind of scary for her, because she knew that a lawsuit was going to come, because people openly asked her when she announced it, like, do you think this is going to get a challenge? Yeah, we'll just have to see how that happens. She was assuming that there were people behind her. And then she turns around and she's just all alone. And the hordes of lawful gun owners and their lawyers are barreling down her. And she's like, uh-oh. She holds up the sign like Wile E. Coyote that just says, yipe.
So one of the things that I want to mention here, and there's a link in the show notes, and I've just been calling him the Attorney General, but let's give his name, Attorney General Raul Torres. And I really like that he said this because it's something that we on the pro-gun side have been saying for a long time. And he says, given that only responsible gun owners are likely to abide, much less recognize your ban, it is unclear how this action will lead to a measurable decline in gun violence in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yeah, no, this is, I mean, nobody has claimed that this is going to help. The statement that 30 days to flatten the curve essentially was going through was just the justification. And that's it. And so, yeah, this was all like the ultimate definition of virtue signaling. And the fact that like everyone's just going, no, we're not going to do this. And I mean, this is also kind of the other side of, we obviously reported on Massachusetts, the potential like super nasty anti-Second Amendment law that was floated in Massachusetts and luckily got shot down, but we will be seeing it again for sure.
Oh, the Lawful Gun Owners Imprisonment Act?
Exactly. Where essentially it rewrote all of Massachusetts gun laws and just made it really, really brutal for Massachusetts gun owners to follow. And there have been, and this has gone all over the country, not just Massachusetts, but obviously, since I live in the state, I've been hearing a lot about it, is pretty much all of the major voices in the Second Amendment here have just simply said, we have been complying and look what it's got us. Stop complying. And it's one of those, if everyone just doesn't follow the law, and specifically if everyone just doesn't follow the law and the police also agree that this is not worthwhile, then their power over us just vanishes. Their power is granted to them by the people. And so if the people say, no, you don't even need something as formal as a recall or an impeachment. Just saying no is all you need. So yeah, so that was great news. And Aaron?
Yes?
Do you know what else is great news?
I think it's going to be something involving Ryan Busse.
That's right. Ryan Busse is running for governor of Montana. I told my wife this, and she's like, "Wait, why do you want him to run for? You just want him to talk more and more in public places so you can do weird audio fisks of him." I'm like, yeah. Oh, I mean,
now I don't know if Montana is the most gun-friendly state in the union, but it's definitely top 10. It might even be top 5.
Yeah, it is pretty close. I mean, I don't think they've gone full permitless carry, but I mean, I would argue that New Hampshire is easily the most gun-friendly state in the union, like hands down. They don't require permits. There's no restrictions on NFA items. It's pretty much as gun friendly as you can get. There's not really any extraneous stuff going on. The permit system that does exist is, as Jay Grazio said once that I love, is just their permit system is why bother. Like it doesn't even have a picture. I actually sent a passport photo into the permitting office when I got my my non-resident New Hampshire permit, and like they just were like, they just threw it away. Because that came my permit, and I actually had the good one because I had a non-resident permit, and those actually get printed up on a plastic credit card style. If you live in the state, it's literally like a handwritten piece of paper.
So Montana, as of early 2021, has a carry system similar to Florida. Or really, I should say Florida has a carry system similar to Montana, in that a permit is no longer required to carry concealed, so long as you can otherwise legally own a gun. But open carry is still prohibited, except in very specific, limited circumstances.
Not even very specific. I believe just outside of like the largest cities, and don't quote me on this. I didn't look it up exactly, but essentially, I think that Montana has always been a permitless carry state, just like Billings, Butte, and Missoula. The population is high enough that within the city limits of those, you are required to have a permit.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you go out far enough in the woods, you're basically considered hiking or camping or whatever, and you can open carry.
Yeah, but essentially, yeah. But even in the smaller towns and hamlets and villages and stuff that are around in Montana, there's no bearing on permits. So they've been extremely gun friendly, and so yeah. So, and for those that don't remember who Ryan Busse is, he used to work for Kimber. He was the marketing director of them, and I would be remiss not to mention that he was the marketing director for Kimber in the early 2000s. That would be the point when Kimber went from making some of the finest 1911s in the world and were the custom gun maker and you've got a Kimber, that's pretty good stuff, to we're going to put an advertisement on the back page of every magazine known to man and create a cult of personality around our guns and fill them full of garbage min parts, and you're going to spend, $900 to $2,000 on a gun and it won't work. I know several people that got Kimbers right out of the box and they did not work, and they had to take them to gunsmith and have the gunsmith make them so they worked. So they dumped a pile of money into a gun when they could have spent a little bit less than that for any number of the reputable 1911 makers and gotten one. And he was their sales manager in those days. So I would be remiss to note that already his position in the gun industry is very, very dubious, but he left them to go work for Giffords, the gun prohibitionist group. And so, I have covered, I did a Weird Audio Fisk on him a while back when he was on the Daily Show. But I also mentioned that he was on the not the Gutowski Files. That's on the Asp podcast version, but on the Reload podcast, he was on that promoting his book, and Stephen Gutowski did a great job at like being nice enough to him that people aren't going to be considering him rude, but also keeping his feet to the fire enough to get him to try to defend himself on some of his anti-gun views. But yeah, so he has been working for gun control groups. He's been an expert witness for a number of gun control laws being pushed by various states in the post NYSERPA world and all that. And now he's planning on running for Montana, and he is pretending to not be as anti-gun as he is. So yeah, let's see. What's the money quote for this? Busse, who favors background checks before purchase but opposes bans on assault rifles, predicted Republicans will portray him as anti-gun. I know there's a vast, frustrated majority out there that are decent, responsible gun owners, and those are the people I represent. Mm-hmm. And so, needless to say, a whole bunch of people have been putting his feet to the fire on this statement that no, I've never been opposed to assault weapons bans. Never mind the fact that I am employed by Giffords, which is openly like one of their core tenets is banning of quote unquote assault weapons. And I have a Twitter feed, or it's a knitter feed, because I can't use the Twix without an account, and where he's essentially trying to defend himself against pro-gun challengers, saying all that. And essentially Costos Moros says, You obviously aren't for a full gun ban, but you have repeatedly supported, as an expert witness, states defending bans on common rifles and magazines over 10 rounds. Such bans aren't popular in Montana, and to be honest, voters to voters, you should address your paid expert testimony. And to which Ryan Busse responds, "Just start with my book, 352 pages. I don't pull a lot of punches all about my stances."
So first of all, pay me money, buy my book, and then, wade through 350 pages rather than expecting a simple answer from a politician.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part is when somebody replied with, what's the term? It's not endorsements, but it's the blurbs on books where someone reads them and tells you it's a cracking good yarn or that sort of thing. What's the word I'm looking for, Weer'd?
Endorsements, proscript.
Well, okay. It'll come to me, like, probably as I'm drifting off to sleep. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point being is that someone else on the Twix pulled up some screenshots of that, and there's a picture of David Hogg saying, "If you understand how we got here, read this." And then there's a picture of Shannon Watts, and it's a long thing. I'm not going to read it, but Gunfight, the book, is a riveting account of how special interests have perverted the Second Amendment. And again, this is a guy who's claiming to be pro-gun. And so this person said, "So unless you fully disavow their endorsements," anyway, nobody can trust you with their Second Amendment rights. And I don't think he's answered to that. I don't think he will answer.
No. Nope. And again, he has taken a whole lot of money to expressly fight against our Second Amendment rights, especially in very, very indefensible positions. I think that is going to be a real hard sell for Montana, because the days of the wood-stocked hunting rifles and side-by-side shotguns are really starting to disappear, because, one statement, I have a relative who's extremely left-wing and definitely not a staunch Second Amendment supporter. I don't know how far else, how far down he'll go as far as supporting bans and various things. He's certainly not super against the Massachusetts gun laws, but he openly said, if I was going to get this he's also happens to be an Army Ranger. And he was just saying, if I was going to go hunting, I would probably buy an AR-15, because that's the gun I know. I'd be really comfortable with it. That's the reason why I carry a 1911, because the first gun that I fell in love with was a 1911. And so before I even owned my first gun, I had shot a 1911s more than anybody else. Because if I knew somebody that had a 1911, I'm like, can we go to the range? Can I shoot your 1911? Cause I got an itch. I need to scratch. And so once you get so familiar with a gun, why wouldn't that be your daily carry? So the idea that yes, if you own an AR-15 or you own a Glock or all of that, Ryan Busse doesn't support you, and but he wants to be your governor. And
so, do you think he's got a snowball's chance of winning?
You know what? I don't really know the politics in there, and also, the big thing that I also don't know is I don't know if they have a primary, because that was another thing. I was actually talking about this with friend of the show with a common name. And who was the guy who actually sent me the very first announcement of that? I'm like, oh really? Oh boy! But I was saying, we weren't quite sure if they're having a primary, because the current governor is a Republican, and he's running as a Democrat, and if they have a primary, though, I'm wondering if they will get a more, for lack of a better word, traditional Democrat, either, a Nancy Pelosi or an AOC style Democrat, who will then point out the fact that, number one, Ryan Busse's a white male, and number two, he not only owns guns, but he uses them to kill animals, and see how the voters put up with that. But if it's not, we'll see. But I really think it'll be hard for him to keep this under wraps and get people to think that he's at all reasonable. He's also, he really is a loose cannon of a guy. Again, I've covered some of his interviews, and he's really out there on a lot of his things. Like he's, on the Red, Blue, and Brady podcast, which I actually have linked in the show notes. I forget if he does openly talk about assault weapons on there. I've got it linked. I didn't get a chance to listen to it just before the show when I thought about it. But I'm pretty sure he does openly speak out against people owning AR-15s in that podcast, because he's in a friendly crowd. So he really tax extreme in that one, while in some of the other groups when he's talking, even in the Twitter feeds, if he's talking to anti-gunners, he's very much like, oh, look at these insane right-wing extremist terrorists. And then suddenly when gun owners start questioning him, he suddenly tacks over into the center and says, no, I'm very reasonable on guns. So like, do you not realize we can see you? And then, but yeah, he, now I forget where I was going, but yeah, he was on these various podcasts, speaking out against, but he was saying one of the things he was talking about was how racist the NRA and the Second Amendment followers are, and talking about like all this horrible mistreatment of Obama and people speaking ill of Obama and all of these racist things that people said about Obama without actually citing what he heard people say, which leads me to believe that it's what you would often see is, someone saying, oh, Obama, he's a terrible president. You're just saying that because he's black. No, no, I didn't, as a matter of fact. But just saying like the NRA vilified Obama because they needed a boogeyman. Also, by the way, Donald Trump kidnapped the Lindbergh baby. He would like go straight from talking about how all this exclusive, thing of just the boogeyman, all that, and then just talk a whole bunch of crap about Trump that isn't even true. It's one thing, you can talk crap about Trump. We talk about crap about Trump all the time on this podcast, but there's stuff that he did and there's stuff that he didn't do. So yeah, he's a loose cannon. So if I had to put money down, I would say he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell, but again, I don't live in Montana, and I've actually never been to Montana, so I don't know if I can put my finger on the pulse that easily.
Okay. So Weer'd, is today Talk Like a Pirate Day? I actually thought it was tomorrow or the 20th, but I'm hearing all sorts of things that it might be today.
I don't even know. I'm a marine biologist. I always talk like this.
Well, you do know what Talk Like a Pirate Day is, right?
Oh
my God, you don't know. It literally International Talk Like a Pirate Day. It is a real thing.
Oh, I know. Yes, I'm aware of the holiday, and my ultimate joke is I always talk like this.
Oh, okay. All right, it is tomorrow.
Okay.
I thought it was the 19th.
Yep, September 19th, 2023.
So Weer'd. In that vein, what's a pirate's favorite letter?
I want to say R, but I believe that's a trap.
Well, you'd think it would be R, but actually it's the C.
Oh, well played, Aaron.
There was so much dead air. I'm going, does he not get it? Or is he laughing so hard he blew the mic out?
No, I think it's more than likely me blowing the mic out. Or I'm also doing this. Wow. I wasn't ready for that, Aaron. Thanks to each and every one of our listeners. Oh Oh my God! Wow! You specifically got me with the anticipation. Obviously there's an R in there. Like the R is the standard issue like pirate joke, and you're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, well, what else could it be? And then it's one of those like, oh God, thank you, Captain Obvious. I told you the one about the pirate that walks into the bar with a ship's wheel coming out of his pants, right?
Arr, it's driving me nuts.
That's right. And then the guy sitting at the bar and realizes that the man sitting beside him is dressed in full pirate garb. And he says, "Are you a pirate?" He says, "Arr." And he said, "If you're a pirate, where are your bucking ears?" And he says, "They're under me bucket hat." It's true. Oh my God, Aaron. Now it is time for us to introduce Xander. I'm going to have to try to get through this without laughing. I'm done with it because it's a silly place, Aaron.
Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum.
It's right. I have to push the pram a lot.
Bum, 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 ba-da-little-down.
Let's not go to Camelot. It's a silly place. It's just such a good choice. The Camelot. And then they have a musical number and they go, "Let's not go to Camelot." And they say it's a silly place. Meanwhile, they've got a Terry Gilliam behind him whose name's Patsy playing a coconut. Oh, dare not she go to a silly place. Last time we heard from Xander, he was talking about right to repair, and Aaron asked if it was an intentional effort to get people to stop fixing things. Here is Xander's independent thoughts on that.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. A few weeks ago, Aaron responded to my segment on right to repair with a question as to whether it was a deliberate attempt by companies to remove the culture of folks who are willing to fix and work on their own stuff, much like anti-gunners are trying to destroy the culture of legal firearms use. My short answer is that I don't think so. Partly because this is relatively early days of dealer repair or landfill options of items. Companies are looking to maximize profit and focusing on that, rather than deliberately targeting shade tree mechanics and folks with the soldering iron. By and large, that is. Long-term effects are insidious and disastrous, if not as deadly on the surface as gun-free zone massacres. By destroying folks' ability to work on vehicles and electronics on their own, it shrinks the pool of possible hires for dealerships and authorized repair centers. What's more, the skill level of the applicants is reduced. Sure, folks might have some education in college or other schools, but there's a vast difference between knowledge and experience. It takes practice to turn book learning into a skill, and that is earned the hard way. It also creates learned helplessness and pride of ignorance. Time was, most folks of the male persuasion were expected to be able to turn a wrench on their car, at the very least so they could change a flat tire. Knowing how to take care of their vehicle kept folks from getting into a bad spot, or at the very least kept them from being taken advantage of by an unscrupulous mechanic. It didn't hurt that many people knew a guy who would willingly change spark plugs or a bad radiator hose and provided parts, a six-pack, and a few bucks. Being willfully helpless makes a person a victim to any shady person that comes along. There are dealers who will gladly charge as much as they can get you for if you don't know a turbocharger from a turbo encabulator. While eventually such folks will have the hammer dropped on them from organizations such as the Better Business Bureau, that doesn't get you back money spent on unnecessary repairs. Sounds a bit like a mugging, doesn't it? Except rather than using a gun, the person holds you hostage with your means of transportation. This ignorance creeps into law as well. Nonsensical vehicle standards creep in, supported by folks who think it sounds good, much like every town mothers for gun safety. Except safety doesn't happen, just the illusion of safety, combined with extra expense in inspections or paperwork to be filled out, which costs are passed out to the customer. Lack of competition drives prices up as well. If a person can't go to a third party for another opinion or a cheaper wrench turn that will at least get their vehicle going for a while, the authorized repair shops have no reason not to charge as much as possible. Lastly, the waste of not being able to repair or maintain items is disgusting. How many iPhones end up in a landfill because of cracked screens or bad batteries? Or damaged charging cable ports? I'd gotten pretty decent at replacing a broken USB port on a cell phone, and could fix one in 15 minutes, not counting phone disassembly and reassembly. That includes soldering extremely fine wires to replace torn traces. The environmental impact of a quick repair of an existing product is far less than that of throwing it away and replacing it with an entirely new item, regardless of the efficiencies the new item has. In the end, I have no doubt that anti-repair folks will attempt to destroy repair culture, just as anti-gun folks are trying to destroy gun culture. Both are short-sighted and very much hurt the very people they claim to help. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
So I listened to this segment twice just to make sure I hadn't zoned out and missed something the first time. But it seems to me that even though Xander said no, the examples he gave sure sounded like yes.
Yeah, I am not 100% convinced, but it is a I respect Xander's choice and judgment, but yeah, I do think that maybe it's not the idea of just crushing the innovative spirit, but he does make a good idea of the better to have stuff become obsolete and stop working on their own, so you buy new stuff is certainly a big thing. And I that hit me right because I've got a relatively brand new Black & Decker string trimmer, and the drive head stopped spinning, which is kind of the whole point. And so I messed around with it a bunch of times and got really, really frustrated, and finally did the thing that is one of those things that, like, in the before there was YouTube, like, you think about, man, what do we do? It's like before there was GPS. Yeah, you just looked at a map or someone gave you written directions.
You printed them out from MapQuest and you held them in your hand as you drove.
Yep.
Because that was safe.
Yeah, no, I remember actually driving down to, the first time I drove down to Cape May, New Jersey from Portland, Maine, and I had a stack of 3x5 note cards with the road that I was supposed to be on and the distance that I had to drive. And I would just flip from one note card to the next as I crossed waypoints. And then I just put them back in reverse order to get home. And there was certainly none of these like, oh, well, you're going to take a little side detour to get away from traffic. No, it was you would drive the main highways as long as you could because, yeah, ain't nobody got time for all those little turns. But yeah, but I went on YouTube and searched and found someone that had like my exact problem. And it's Black & Decker was nice enough to put a plastic drive wheel or drive gear on this. So, and clearly the teeth have gotten stripped out on it. I haven't had a chance because it's been pouring rain here in Massachusetts. So I haven't had a chance to actually take it all apart and physically make sure that is the part that's broken before I order it. But there's a part of me that's like, I should just throw this whole thing in the trash and just buy a different one. Because honestly speaking, my wife actually asked that question. I said, if it breaks again, yeah, it's just going straight in the trash and I'm just buying something else. But in this case, it's one of those like, I might as well try to fix it. But they really do make it hard.
Title of your sex tape.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. So suppressors are sometimes referred to as cans, and a few weeks ago, David talked about how they worked. This week, he's talking about how you can acquire one, or how you can.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Previously, I talked about the history and function of suppressors, but only briefly referenced how to get one. In this segment, I'd like to expand on this process. Keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV, and I haven't stayed in a Holiday Inn Express recently. The information in this post is not legal advice. That being said, locate a good lawyer who is familiar with federal, local, and state firearm laws. For listeners who are members of self-defense insurance programs like USCCA or US Law Shield, They usually have a non-emergency legal helpline that may be useful in finding a local lawyer who specializes in firearm law. The first decision that needs to be made after deciding to acquire a suppressor is individual ownership versus trust. There are pros and cons to each. Individual ownership reduces the amount of paperwork and expense required. However, the suppressor cannot be out of the control of the owner or accessible to other people in the owner's absence. Yes, other people can use the suppressor, but only under the owner's direct supervision. In my case, that would have meant getting a separate safe to store my National Firearms Act items, since my wife has the combination to our gun safe. An NFA trust adds the cost of the lawyer's fee, and each member of the trust has to do a certain amount of paperwork, including fingerprints. Once done, the trust owns the NFA items, and all members have authorized access. This can also simplify inheritance as well, especially if the inheritor is added as a member of the trust prior to final need. The second most fun part of the process is suppressor shopping. There are numerous suppressor manufacturers to browse and a large variety of suppressors available from each. However, take any listing of decibel reduction with a grain of salt. As far as I'm aware, there are no industry testing standards for suppressors, so it's hard to compare apples to apples. As an example, here's how I selected my latest acquisition. I wanted a suppressor that could be used on 9mm firearms or smaller. Specifically, my Smith & Wesson M&Ps in 9mm and .22 rimfire, as well as my 9mm PCCs. One of the benefits of working for a gun shop is the occasional pro deal. I was able to get a SilencerCo Octane 9 at a nice discount. Two of the main features that led me to this particular suppressor, after price, were the number of different attachment options, it would work on all the firearms I mentioned a moment ago, and the ability to dismantle the unit for cleaning and maintenance. Sealed suppressors can be less expensive, but they're harder to clean. I prefer user-maintainable designs. Another consideration when choosing a suppressor is sightline. The vast majority of suppressors are cylinders with the bullet path in the center. This means the outer body can occlude the view through traditional height pistol iron sights. One of the few exceptions is the SilencerCo Osprey series, which places the bulk of the suppressor below the bore axis, much like Maxim's original designs. To make sighting a suppressed pistol easier, regular height iron sights can be swapped out for taller suppressor height designs that allow a sight picture above the body of the suppressor. Alternatively, a red dot sight can also be used. Once a suppressor is selected, make sure the FFL of a local dealer is on file with the seller and order the suppressor. Most suppressor websites will have an FFL locator option. Once the receiving dealer has been confirmed, add the suppressor to the cart and pay. The item will be delivered to the FFL. It can take anywhere from days to a few months. And the purchaser should be informed within 3 business days of receipt. Please do not contact the FFL as soon as shipping tracking shows it arrived. There's admin involved in receiving regular firearms, much less NFA items. Trust paperwork can be drawn up any time prior to purchase. However, the actual BATFE Form 4 to initiate the acquisition process cannot begin until a serial number is available. At that point, everything can start moving. I purchased my latest suppressor through Silencer Shop. They have a fairly painless interface, and trust documents can be uploaded as PDFs via the Silencer Shop user portal on their website. More importantly, Silencer Shop has secure identity documentation, or SID, kiosks in many retail locations. This streamlines the process considerably, including fingerprinting. Once all the documentation and fingerprints have been submitted, along with a check or credit card information for the $200 federal tax stamp fee, the waiting begins. According to BATFE, they've been trying to streamline the processing of suppressor tax stamp applications. Their stated goal is to achieve a 90-day turnaround time. We're still pretty far from that. My last suppressor, which was finally approved in mid-August of this year, took around 250 days from application. Current reported average wait times are available on the Silencer Shop webpage. One of the recent changes to the suppressor process is the BATFE no longer sends a physical copy of the tax stamp. Instead, the applicant receives a PDF via email. I strongly recommend printing at least one copy and storing it in a safe place. In addition, I keep an electronic copy on my phone. By federal law, the stamp must be presentable anytime the owner of an NFA item is in possession of that item. Contrary to common belief, there is no paperwork requirement when transporting a personally owned suppressor across state lines. For any other NFA items, a Form 20 must be filled out and approved prior to leaving the owner's state of residence. Once the process is complete, the suppressor can be picked up from the receiving FFL. Then the most fun part can begin, attaching it to a firearm and shooting suppressed. While some ranges may have restrictions on some NFA items, I've yet to find one that doesn't allow suppressors. As long as suppressors are legal in that jurisdiction, of course. Even though the range may not have legal authority to request viewing the owner's tax stamp, it's a common requirement. Don't make a fuss and be prepared to show documentation. 2 final points. Get a good heat-resistant mitt or pad. Another option is a suppressor cover. Suppressors get very hot very quickly. Use the mitt or pad to make sure the suppressor isn't loosening, at least for the first few range outings, and you learn its ways. If it does start working its way off the barrel, this can lead to a baffle strike. Best case, the end cap needs to be replaced. Worst case, the suppressor is trashed. Be safe, be careful, be suppressed.
When you use the silencer a lot, you have to put a piece of cloth here because it gets very hot and could burn it inside. A damp black cloth is the best.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor to the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
I always joke, and I'm joking, that the only gun law in Massachusetts that I support is the ban on suppressors, because I'd be so broke if I could buy cans. Like, if you could put a can on the gun, I want a can on the gun. I love suppressors so much.
Well, you know, Weer'd, suppressors are legal in Florida, but I'm poor. Why don't you buy me one?
Well, I think I did, and then I think something horrible happened and you had to spend the money on that, but...
No, actually, that was my Trump stimulus check as a result of the pandemic, and I spent it on a CPAP. And so, yeah, in the Facebook group, I said, who wants to see a picture of my new suppressor? Ooh, me. Picture of CPAP.
I mean, it is a suppressor of sorts.
I believe that was one of the jokes I made, yes. Yeah. And it is a lot better for my long-term health, but I was so close to buying one.
I mean, I saw your sleep analysis, and one of those like, oh yeah, you're gonna die.
Yeah. So I only mildly regret it. But if anyone wants to know, my size in suppressors is 9mm.
I mean, it's a good choice. It's a good starter. But yeah,
putting that out there.
Yeah, and gonna say that David's advice on starting a trust is very, very good advice, because a friend of mine bought several NFA items. I can't remember. It was at least 2, probably 3, maybe 3 or 4 items, and then finally decided that he wanted to get an NFA trust, and so he set up the trust and got it all set away, and then he had to transfer everything in his collection from himself to the trust to get it under the trust. And that's all.
So did he have to buy all new stamps?
He had to buy all new stamps and go through all of the paperwork all over again. So it's one of those things of you know what, if you're going to get NFA items, like my nephew's contemplating getting something NFA. And I'm like, dude, if you do it, just get just start off with the trust and put everything in the trust, because the good news about it is that you can add and remove people on the trust. I don't know what talk to a lawyer about how to do all of that, because there's been some stuff in flux on how to add and remove people to trusts, because obviously you don't want to be adding it's not good to be adding like convicted felons and people who can't have access to the guns in the first place, but yet they're part of the trust. But the idea is that you could even add like your next of kin to the trust, so that when you pass away, guess what? All of your stuff just transfers to them automatically, and they don't even need to get stamps or anything like that. Versus, if a relative of yours dies and they don't have a trust and they have some NFA items in their name, you could probably take possession of that stuff, but you would need to transfer it and pay an additional tax to get it moved on. But instead, you just move the trust.
Well, I think the semantics of the trust work in that, okay, so if you put your next of kin on and you die, it doesn't transfer to them. It stays within the trust.
Correct. Yeah.
And so it's just, well, you're dead, but they're on it. It never leaves the possession of the trust.
That's correct. But as far as physical possession goes, the members of the trust have the say over where the items are and how the items are used, and so therefore
constructive possession, yes.
Yeah. So if you are dead, obviously you no longer have a say in anything. But what happens to your property? Well, yeah, your property stays within the trust, but you can add people onto the trust as time moves on. And again, it also works very, very well for households because, yeah, if a family member has access to the safe that's going through, that's technically a violation of the trust. Or, if you've got a, suppressed rifle for a home defense gun and you're out of town and your spouse needs to defend themselves. Well, they're just using an NFA item that's not in their name and not in your presence. That's a big no-no. But if they're part of the trust, fine as kind.
You know what? I think we need a segment on NFA trusts. And I'm going to reach out to Ben Blatt. Maybe he'll say no. Maybe he doesn't have the time or the knowledge. But he is certainly knowledgeable about guns. He's a lawyer, and he's appeared on the show before. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can have someone who's actually knowledgeable about these things give an informative segment about them.
I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah. So Weer'd, I think you could say that in a lot of ways, an NFA trust is similar to a prenuptial agreement in that it's a whole lot less expensive and easier to do it up front than afterwards.
That is true. That's a great segue, Aaron, because as you guys all know, I've been friends with Wes from the Mind Killer podcast for longer than really podcasts were a thing. And thanks again to Old Windways, it turns out he's the magic thing that got us two connected. He listens to both our podcasts and was the one that said, "Hey, you guys are both talking about you going to that same camp in Vermont. There can't be that many of them." And nope, it's not. And we've known each other for years. And I realized that Wes is a divorce lawyer. Wes is also a divorce lawyer who is very happily married and has a lovely family. And I just went, you know what? A divorce lawyer who's happily married. I bet he's got some great insights on how to form a happy marriage. And so, yeah, there's my question. What are Wes's tips to a happy marriage? I am pleased to welcome to the show fellow podcast and longtime friend of myself, Wes Fenza of the Mind Killer podcast. How you doing, Wes?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, all right, how do I get, you were nice enough to have me on your show. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
It was awesome.
Yeah, if you want me back on, I'd love to be on. But I was like, how am I going to get Wes on? I know you're not as big a gun guy as all of that. And then I realized, hey, I'm seeing you with your wife and your daughter at camp and all of that. And I've known I knew your parents and your grandparents and all that. And I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of happy marriages there. And I don't know if you've announced it on the podcast specifically, but what is your line of work?
I'm a divorce attorney.
Yeah. And so I realized, hey, happily married man. I knew your grandparents, and they were married up until their passing, and they were married for forever, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it was like 60 some years.
Yeah, you also lost your father, but your parents were married until that happened, mm-hmm. and you've been married for and with your wife for a number of years. And so, how long have you guys been together?
We've been married for I think 12 years, together for about 20.
Yeah, that's that is above national average. I would argue. And given that you spend your working days working on dissolving other people's marriages and hearing all their stories on how things went bad, I thought, man, here's someone who knows how to make it work and has seen it work and also seen it fail. You got to have some advice for people looking for a happy and long relationship.
Yeah. So actually, one of the reasons I went into divorce law was because I knew so many people in bad relationships that just needed to break up. And I was like, I would love to be a part of that. Help make that happen. So first advice is, if you're in a bad relationship, break up.
That's not some bad advice. I mean, that's one of those jokes. Why are divorces so expensive? Because they're worth it.
Exactly. But don't look at the relationship as an end in itself. The relationship is the people in the relationship, and you are one of them. So if you're not happy in this relationship, leave. You will be happier. Your spouse or your partner will probably be happier. Even your kids, if you have kids, will probably be happier. Because it's that's a more difficult question. I think the consensus is that if the parents can really get along, then it's better for them to stay together. But if there's conflict in the house, it's much better for the parents to split up.
I mean, that's absolutely great advice. So what do you see as the most common reasons for people to come into your office?
It's mostly people that never should have gotten married in the first place because they don't really love each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know how relationships are supposed to work. If the partners don't actually love each other and want good things to happen to each other. Now, I was telling you, when you asked me to do this, I was like, my advice is going to be super weird because I'm a polyamorous relationship anarchist. So my outlook on relationships is like several standard deviations outside of normal.
Well, I would argue maybe not. I mean, I would argue that my late father-in-law, who you also knew from camp, he when he passed away, he was on his third wife, and he had cheated on all the previous ones with the next one. And you know what? It seems like new relationship energy was kind of his jam. So maybe polyamory would have been a little bit better for him.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend polyamory over cheating. It's basically the same thing, but you're just being honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking one or the other, definitely do the honest one. I recommend polyamory to people, not because like, oh, you can date lots of people and it's great. I don't even recommend people date more than one person necessarily. I think you should date however many people you want to, but I recommend not making agreements about monogamy, because the whole thing about monogamy is that you're telling your partner, hey, if there's a thing that you want to do that you think would make you more happy and fulfilled, or just, you just get a kick out of it or whatever, I want you to go ahead and not do that. Not because it hurts me in any measurable or direct way, just because seeing you happy in that way would make me unhappy, which I think is not great. I strive to feel happy when my partners are happy in whatever way makes them happy. And I think that is important in a long-term relationship. Like, you have to be actively rooting for each other. And you have to, and this is, I always say, like, the reason Gina, my wife, and I have worked out for this long is we're always on each other's team. That whenever one of us has a goal, the other person is in support of that goal. And they may not be actively working toward it, like just to be on the team doesn't mean you're all doing the same thing, but you are supporting each other's goals. And you never have a goal where she's like, well, I hope he doesn't accomplish that, and same with me for her.
I think that's absolutely true.
And I think that, and I think that ties into monogamy, because, what if you want to kiss another person? And then if your partner's like, no, don't do that, then suddenly you're not on the same team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of couples, they just don't want to, and that's fine. No problem with that. But I feel like when people do, then you got to find a way to be on the same team. It doesn't necessarily mean non-monogamy or polyamory or whatever, but you can't get in the situation where one party's like, I want this, the other party's like, I want you to not have that. It's different if it's something that will like materially harm you. That makes sense because it's because your partner shouldn't. If your partner wants to do something that actually like harms you in some way, that's already an issue. And it's truly loving partners there will come together and try to be creative and come up with a solution where everyone can get what they want and nobody has to be harmed or you're minimizing the amount of harm that happens. But when it's something like monogamy, you can, sure, if you go and get another, full-time serious partner, that could harm me in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So I understand people being like, well, I don't want to do that. Right. But like, if they just, if you're out of town one night and they want to go kiss a person at a bar, like that's not going to harm you. You're not going to be hurt by that. So that's the sort of thing where I'm like, okay, well, why then, if there's nothing you can point to that like you're going to be deprived of, that is going to affect your life in any conceivable way, why then is it still bad? And that's the thing about jealousy, is that it is purely destructive. It's like, I feel bad because you feel good. That's all it is. And actually, the reason we became non-monogamous was we decided like we don't want to have jealousy a thing in our relationship. And it wasn't even about other people at that point. It was like I had gotten a snow day off of work and Gina hadn't. And when I told her, her reaction was like, well, I wish I got a snow day, whatever. And I was like, that's like, I don't like that. I don't like that. And like, I probably would have reacted the same way. And like, I don't like reacting that way. I want to be happy for you when good things happen to you. And that sort of led to the larger decision. But we're like, let's not be jealous of each other. And, and it's a little harder than just saying that. But it directly led to us deciding to not be monogamous.
I mean, it's a good way to think about things. And even with the something that's going to be harmful, you've got to think about my wife was one of the more instrumental people in me quitting smoking. And I certainly know many partners that have been the intervention point for someone who has a substance abuse issue.
Yeah.
But that only works if the person also wants that goal. I knew that smoking wasn't a great thing for me. I knew that it was something I should quit. It was just something that I was doing at that moment and happened to be really liking there. And so we were on the same team. It just was, I was the one that was dealing with the actual nicotine withdrawals and things like that. And that's another argument that you could have on people not on the same team that should probably split up, is I've definitely known people where the relationship was broken up because of it, because one person had an issue and like a substance abuse issue. It could be with a relationship issue. They've taken on a secondary partner, and that partner is now the more important one, which means that the older partner is now left in the rut. Well, that is harmful. And if you guys can't both root for that mutual goal where everyone is rooting for the other person, then maybe it is time to call it quits.
Right. And if in that situation, that's sort of idiosyncratic, opening up as non-monogamous advice. This is not general purpose. But when you're in that situation, you really got to find a way to make your existing partner part of the process. If it's just, involving them in your excitement, having them, talking to them about your other relationship a lot, making them feel included in it, even if they're not like, not going to be going on dates with you probably. But you still got to find a way to make that your partner feel like they are included and involved. Mm-hmm. And this is not a thing you're doing without them. For most people. I mean, some people don't care. But I think most partners, that's very reassuring. It's much worse to just have your partner just like go out and do a thing that you really don't know what's going on, and then have them come back and be like, that was a black box that just happened there.
I think the one thing that I haven't heard you mention, which is one of the key things, I've mentioned this a couple of times on various formats is one of the reasons that turned me from, you know what, this person who's my girlfriend, I kind of want to make her my wife, was when I realized that we have never had the same fight twice. We have an issue. We talk about it. We fight constantly with all the damn time, which is another point that I think is contentious. If ever someone says, "Oh, we never fight," well, I hope you've got a contingency plan for when this whole thing falls apart, because
See, I hear people say that all the time. It's nonsense.
Yeah. If
couples don't need to fight.
If you guys aren't having disagreements and working stuff out, it just means it's all building up in the background. Because
true.
There's no two people that are a perfect match, and if you're looking for a perfect match, it ain't going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, I found that we every time we fought, we figured out why we fought, and we worked to resolve it and worked our hardest to figure it out. And there may have been stages on you did that thing that I don't like again. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm trying. Is there a better way I could have said that? And things like that. And I think that is an absolute important thing, is to welcome disagreement, welcome conflict resolution, but also work hard at it. And it sucks.
Yeah. But I think that is just, that comes naturally if you're on the same team, because when you have a disagreement, it's your partner. There's different kinds of disagreements, but a lot of disagreements are about, I want this and you want this. But if you're on the same team, your partner wanting something means you want it too. So when they tell you, this thing you're doing is affecting me this way, that is bad, you're naturally going to want to stop doing that, or like figure out a different way to do it that is not affecting your partner that way. And I think a lot of, I've read a lot of like relationship advice books, and they're all, I think they're all just way too specific, because they're like, oh, in this situation, do this. In this situation, do that. Use this language. Talk about this issue in this way. Set aside, 1 day a week to do this, or like have this ritual. And I'm always like, I feel like a lot of it is sort of mimicking the practices of good relationships, instead of telling people how to actually have a good relationship. Because all of this stuff are things that people do naturally when they really deeply care about one another. And I don't know how to tell people to care about other people. I think that just has to happen.
Well, that's also the hard part, because
right.
You're the product of a long-term successful marriage, and at least your mom. I never met your dad's folks, but your mom was the product of a long-term successful loving marriage. So we saw it a lot firsthand, and unfortunately, a lot of people have never even witnessed it.
Yeah, but I don't think that is necessarily a hindrance to what I'm talking, because what I'm talking about is not just how to do a marriage. I think everyone, or most people, I think psychopaths are probably an exception, but most people, they care about other people. It just happens. So when it comes to advice, my advice is marry the person you care about. Like, when you really deeply care about somebody's well-being, on a similar level to the way you care about your own well-being, that's the person you should marry. And you should not marry a person that you don't feel that way about. And then I think the relationship issues, when they come up, sort of solve themselves when that's how you feel. And you have to be open to that. And I understand that a lot of people have had a lot of experiences that leave them closed off to that. But there's if you're open to it, then I think either it happens or it doesn't.
I mean, I think that wraps it all up. Be on the same. Find someone you want to be on the same team with, and have them do what you can to make them happy, and make sure that they're doing what they can to make you're happy. And if that's not happening, see if you can fix it. And if you can't fix it, find someone else,
or be alone.
Or
being alone's underrated.
Oh, I mean that's absolutely an option. Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Wes. Where can people find you?
They can find me. I'm WFenza on Twitter. I use Twitter now. I'm a Twitter guy.
You mean the Twix?
Yes, X-Twitter. That's what I call it, as in the former Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me at the Mind Killer Podcast, where we try to summarize the past 2 weeks of news to cut out all the stupid crap that everyone else is talking about and just talk about the stuff that actually matters. In a, irreverent kind of way. which you can probably tell from this interview. And I also blog at livingwithinreason.substack.com.
And if you're looking to get rid of your marriage and you live in the state of New Jersey, you know who to look up.
That's right. If you need to get divorced in New Jersey, or much more importantly, if you're getting married in New Jersey, call me and I will write you a prenuptial agreement. Everybody needs a prenup.
Ooh.
If you don't write it, the government writes it for you.
I mean, that is an excellent. We kind of buried the lead on that one. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Wes, and everyone, go check out the Mind Killer podcast.
All right, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Wow, I wonder if he's one of the very small subsets of lawyers who aren't functional alcoholics. I mean, he sure seems happy and healthy.
Yeah, no, he's a nice guy. I mean, I will say that that camp is absolutely alcohol free, so there's absolutely no drinking that goes on there whatsoever. And I've certainly not ever seen any members of his family partaking in alcohol while at camp. Wink, wink, wink.
I was waiting for you to say something like, and I have never brought an unlabeled flask to camp. No, never.
Oh, I mean, I will just say my very first year at camp, a bunch of us are all just like we're going out, we're gonna go grab beers and we're gonna go off to the field off of the far thing. It was great. It was be like teenagers again. We went off and drank in the woods, and I just stumbled back to camp absolutely shattered. It was quite enjoyable. But yeah, I was telling my wife about this. And she was just like, "Oh, yeah, that's great." I said, we had a great interview." She said, "How much was it about money?" I said, "That's exactly what I thought. He was going to start talking about money issues." And I said, "It didn't even come up." And so, yeah, but yeah, the idea of like everybody being on the same team, and oh my God, like so many people who are either in marriages that ended in divorce or marriages that I am predicting will end in divorce. Or I've outright heard people say that end in divorce, where it's very, very clear that both people aren't on the same team and aren't rooting for each other, is one of those like that. That is really just kind of an amazing common denominator for it. And I also liked his idea of like I became a divorce lawyer because I knew a whole bunch of people in crappy relationships. I wanted to help them get out of it. It's not a bad thing. Like, I think that the stigma of divorce has gone away a lot, so that people don't feel trapped in a miserable marriage anymore. But yeah, if you're in a marriage and it's not working, by all means end it. And nothing wrong with that. But yeah, if you can help it, don't. And yeah, as Wes says, get a prenup. We actually don't have a prenup, which is fine. I keep telling my wife, if we get divorced, I'm taking you to the cleaners. I am accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
Okay.
Also, about every anniversary, like, I think this was our 16th wedding anniversary. Oh, no. I don't even remember. But every year, it's always like, hey, what do you think? Time to call it quits? Actually, said that to a coworker. I asked her once. It was on I was at work on my wedding anniversary, and I was like, "Hey, how long were you married to your husband?" And she she's one of these people who always talks about, "Oh, I'm so happy you divorced my husband," and she never remarried, and all that. I'm like, how long were you married to my husband? She was like, "We were married for 10 years." I said, "Oh no, crap! It's my 10th wedding anniversary. What do you think? Time for me to hang it up?" There's a reason why people call me Weird Beard.
I just want to know how you're going to afford said lawyer, broke ass as you are.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not broke.
Well, considering that your wife brings in the money.
Yeah, but half of it's mine.
It's only half yours if you win.
That's true, but I also have access to a lot of it. So there is that.
All right.
I haven't thought that far. I'm in a happy marriage. I don't want to divorce my wife. I love her very much. And we are both on the same team. Told her all that. She goes, "Oh, yeah, that's true." And who's on our team, Aaron?
our listeners.
Yes, each and every one of them. They're on our team because they're listening to us. They like to hear what we have to say, and we are entertaining them, and we are happy to entertain them. Thank you so much for listening. But I do have to give an extra special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast and sign up. You guys can get an early release of the podcast. Plus, we have bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels. There's going to be a bunch from this episode. This was a silly one. We've got the ACP film tracks. I actually was just editing one before we started recording, and it's it was a fun one. And we also have the monthly. We have the ACP Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more from me at my blog, which is weirdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree / Suddenly I'm Sean Connery. And you can get more from me at Linktree / Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette. All one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So he's packed and he's holding, and I believe in the sand beneath my toes, and I believe in the faith that grows. Our doot 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 is assorted, and so is our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night. It really has been a silly episode.